My first sales call. My first sales call. Nope, we already did that one. Outtake. Sixth grade. Sixth grade. So this is interesting. Now we're in sixth grade, 1994. So I was 12. So I had 12 years to 30, and my dad's 42. That sounds right. And my mom is 44. That can't be right. They look a lot younger than that in this. But let's see, 30 plus he was 28. No, he's 26. And he was 28 when he had me. So he's 40 in this. Yeah, that makes more sense. And my mom's 42. So look at that sweater, Mom. That is very 90s, 80s into 90s. I remember that sweater. That's so weird. It's like, you guys, anyone, will look at some picture and just see a picture. But I see my head pressed up against that sweater, sleeping in the car on a long drive home. Like, I remember those little patches up against my face. Like, just little stuff. Blows your mind. Also, you realize how pretty your parents are. When you're young, they're your parents. But when you're older, you're like, oh, you guys are like a cute little couple. You're adorable. Yeah, and the reason why these are important, so let's see, sixth grade. Let's go to the next one. That's the first one. That's Ozzy, my cousin in the middle. We always had the big extended Mexican family. That's why we lived in the Inland Empire. There's a lot of my mom's family around here. Then my dad's family was in Newport Beach. Oh yeah, where did I grow up? Grew up in Southern California. The Inland Empire is what we call the stretch of the 10 in between LA and Palm Springs. LA stretches for about like 20, 30 miles, maybe even 40. It goes all the way to like West Covina. So from the ocean, you go like 30 miles, you're still in like, I forgot how big, but like LA County's huge. But then after that, you have these stretches of like, I think it's Riverside County and then San Bernardino County. And so we grew up in like that area. Like this is Loma Linda. So this is definitely Inland Empire. Yeah, Loma Linda is just in San Bernardino County. But before this, we were in Riverside County. We were in Corona. So I have to dig up for those pictures. That would take forever if I was going to go over everything. But we're just doing little benchmarks in time. But this one is in Loma Linda, the Inland Empire. And we had a lot of cousins and family around. Now my dad's family stayed at the beach, Newport Beach, Orange County. Didn't hang around them as much. We hung around, again, after my dad's dad passed. We weren't as close with my grandma. And so these guys were kind of on their own, my mom and dad. And then we helped out whenever we could. And so this is a cousin. We were, I don't know if it's helping out. It's just like the family stays tight. And we just like, it was important to us. And so we're hanging out with Ozzy. Oh, and then also what's important in this picture is, that's 29F. So this is at the Oasis Apartments. And the Oasis Apartments is like my formative years. What I'm realizing, thinking about your childhood, is like, if you don't stop and do this, you kind of forget where like your little signposts were in your development. That like when by now I have my personality. It's like I look at these pictures and I look like a kid, but if you think back to then, no, I had my view of life and I was making my decisions, and you grow into yourself and you learn a lot more. But most of your formative morality is by the time you're 10 and 12. Like your decisions on how you're going to go about life, and then so when you go in and you want to actually audit your personality, change your personality, you have to go back to these years, and maybe even younger. Like they say, like 5 or 6. You're starting to figure out that morality of the world. So Oasis Apartments was this apartment complex off of Mountain View in Loma Linda, which is like surrounded by this gate, and then there's like hundreds of units in there. So there's maybe like thousands of, over 1,000 easily, of like people. So there's like, we had dozens of kids running around. Maybe hundreds, but we did have dozens of kids running around in the street. And since it's gated in, it's like we're not running in a street. The streets within this community are like a gated community. Now this isn't like private community, but it's like where we all ran around and did crazy stuff. So we would like run on our bikes, and at one point we had little like warring gangs, but like not gangs like Bloods and Crips, but like we would just like, our group would see their group, and we'd all run and wrestle and tumble and shove dirt and grass in each other's mouths, and then like run away, or like if you found one alone. So that was one of the games we played. A lot of Legos on the sidewalk. So those sidewalks right there in this picture, we'd be playing our Legos and like just something we would I hear about this nowadays on the internet, and like people freak out, but like these house parties you would have where like when the parents aren't home, everyone goes over to some one person's house and they just wreck it. But like unsupervised latchkey kids, basically, like we would come home off the bus, and you know, people find out our parents aren't home, and you just run over to that person's house and you're trying to get in, and they're like locking you out, and it's kind of a game, kind of serious. You know, you can always call your parents or the cops or someone. So it's like people aren't being breaking stuff, but they're trying to get into your house and try to push them out, and everyone's like, you're pushing those boundaries of like teasing, teasing until someone cries or gets hurt, and then I guess you find that's what kids do, and then you find your boundaries, but you know, no supervision. But I think, you know, it's a funny story until something bad happens, and then it's irresponsible. So I remember like kids trying to get over that. There's this little porch area trying to get in, and we're locking them out, being like, our parents aren't home, you can't come in. They're like, we're coming in anyways. What else? You know, and then you make friends. And we lived there for a couple years, so that Oasis Apartments was where we ran around and learned all those little lessons, like kids try to beat you up, and then you stand up to them, and then you become friends. And the ones who do get beat up are the ones who get picked on. Is that right? Should we, can we protect those kids? Should we protect those kids? I guess you have a unit, and everyone, the hierarchy is established, you know, and like then the bully, who's kind of the leader of the pack, you trust him because he's a tough guy. And then if he always bullies everyone, we kind of leave that group. So I was just talking to a friend like that. A friend, Mike, he was that dude in our group. And if he always picked on everyone, we wouldn't hang out with him. But like if he crossed his line, he would maybe fight one of us, but that's why we hung out with him, because he was a tough guy. And then like I was like the creative guy. I always had the idea or the next scheme. And then we had like the smart guy, and we had the guy that we all picked on, but like he kind of took it, but he was funny. Or everyone adds their value to the group, and it was like democratic that way. It wasn't merely just predatory, but there is some of that predatory while you're figuring out the ranking in your little social groups. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a sociologist, but something about how kids play, there's a fairness to it, and it's not all like just like victims and bullyhood. There's this like establishing of the order that happens. And then there's that kid who's off, who's just like violent, who's just like picking on everyone, and you usually stay away from him. Like you can kind of, kids have this intuitive sense. They have to when they're young. They have this intuitive bullshit detector, I think. They see a lot more than people give them credit for. Here's my dad, third one. My dad walking up, Bryn Mawr Elementary. Now, this is really the reason why I have these pictures up here, because I gave the speech at Bryn Mawr for our 6th grade graduation class. They built Bryn Mawr as the new elementary school right up Mountain View at the very top. I don't think it was on Mountain View, but you go all the way up Mountain View to the top of the mountain, and then there's this elementary they just built there. We were the first graduated class. They let us give a speech. I don't remember what it was. So we're in the 6th grade. There was a competition for who would give the speech for the inaugural ceremony of the elementary school when we graduated, for the first class graduating. And I had this thing, I read a lot, and my parents always encouraged me. My mom always took us to the library, so we were always put like a pen and a paper in our hands, and we were at restaurants. My parents liked to go to restaurants a lot. They'd always give us pens and papers to draw, so always encouraged us creatively and intellectually. So when stuff like that happened, like there's a speech contest, I just kind of was confident, and so I didn't, I don't know, I wrote the speech and I won, and I got to say it in front of the class, and it just didn't seem like a big deal. And looking back on that now, I've kind of shied away from leadership roles all my life, because I wanted to make sure I knew what I believed in or thought about. I just didn't really I wasn't comfortable with people, like, I don't know. There's something going on there where like every now and then I just kind of duck my head and just stay in the background just to observe. But when I wanted to say my piece, I always felt pretty comfortable doing it. So it's just, I'm looking at these pictures, it's interesting. I'm talking to the principal in the background here with my dad off to the right. The guy in the jeans and the red sweater is my dad. And I'm going over my speech. And I remember doing it like it was nothing, like it was just interesting. I think I said, so it's Bryn Mawr Elementary, and one of my lines was, when people first heard the name Bryn Mawr, they might have thought it was Martian for pizza. So I have these little like jokes to keep people interested, and then I went on and talked about, but they have great playgrounds where we play, and classrooms where we learn, and blah blah blah. But it was a good speech. I remember parts of it, but I remember kids in like junior high or even high school being like, I remember your speech in elementary school. You said Bryn Mawr was Martian for pizza. So It was good copy. The next one is me. You can see under Bryn Mawr Elementary in the blue shirt, head down, probably thinking about my speech, preparing. I haven't given speeches in forever. Like that's stuff that I try to remember. Is that like I got like this is my shit. I used to be pretty dope with it. Percy's Penguins. Percy's Penguins is interesting because I drew this. So we had the competition for the speech, and we had the competition for our banner, which we would carry because they were going to have all the classes carry their own banners of their class, and you had to like do a drawing or whatever. The thing was every classroom was going to have a decide on the artwork for their banner, and then we marched with our little banners into the assembly, and then we listened to the speeches that were selected school-wide, like 3 or 4 speeches to be given. So I got my speech selected as one of the couple for the whole school, and then I drew the banner for our school. I have to give credit to my brother because I'm pretty sure I asked him about it, and he just sketched this out. He's 2 years older than me, and he's always been the talented artist of the family. But then I just copied it out, and I got it like, that's a little feather in my cap. So when I was young, I always knew I was capable artistically and like confidence-wise. But then I just chose not to apply myself because I didn't think school was the most important thing. It's one of these like precocious kids who just when adults are talking to you, it's like, I'm not sure if I believe this guy. So, but I always just felt like if I wanted to, I could do this stuff. So like, yeah, I had these nice little positive esteem sources. And there I am with my teacher. That's Miss Percy in the black skirt and the white blouse. One of these young progressives. She was really cool, very sincere. I remember she talked to us about sex at the end of the year, and she was like, it is probably the most fun thing you'll do in your life. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, really? Is that cool? I mean, I know people talk about it, but I didn't know it was like, Miss Percy says it's like the coolest thing ever. But she was just really trying to like, kind of like break it down, give us some advice and stuff. It might seem a little young, but one of these girls in our class was knocked up next year, 7th grade. So yeah, no, kids were all about it back then. We grew up fast in the society. We just grow up. If people, I mean, yeah, one of those girls was dating a high schooler in 6th grade. She just developed quick, and he would pick her up in her car. I remember that. So there's all these like kids see and hear everything, and they look innocent, and then we project what we would like is our innocence onto them. And I think it's because maybe because we don't want to remember our own childhood and how fast we grew up. Or maybe some of us were sheltered. And so we project this innocence like these kids, like when I'm looking, like me right next to Miss Percy, kneeling down. And then here's the good one, because I see Austin Holt, which is the kid in the middle of the picture. This is number 7 out of 8. And I see Stephen White to the left, which is the black kid to the left. I recognize a couple of these kids. And yeah, like we just look like kids. But then if I told you the stories, it'd sound like South Park. Like, I didn't curse back then. I didn't curse until high school. Conservative Christian kid. I was like, why? If you don't have to. And so I just avoided it. But we talk the dirtiest stuff. We just like, because you're grabbing experience. You just want to know about the world. So Stephen, I remember, he got in trouble, suspended for fighting or something, and he couldn't go on the end of the year trip to Disneyland, and he punched a wall and broke his hand. But Stephen was a part of our crew. He was a part of the crew that tried to beat me up before I became friends with them. They tried to chase after me, but they were cool. And then Austin and I would always go back and forth. So the white kid to the right of him, I had my daily disses on Austin because Austin, especially if you got Mexicans, blacks, and Puerto Ricans, and then we pick on the white kid. But then Austin, he was a little bit tough, I remember. And I think later on he tried out for like the quarterback of his high school. He didn't go to my high school, I went to a different one. But me and him would like, the group would like, you find the one to turn on. And so they would turn on like the weaker ones, and then turn on me because I was always this hairy. So I was like this hairy little Mexican kid, easy to make fun of. But I had a mouth on me so I could defend myself with my mouth. I wouldn't fight the best, but I would fight back. So like we would all like, if you make it into a group just by not being a punk, and you just, defend yourself best you can. Kids aren't sociopaths. They don't prey on the helpless or defenseless, but they do push you. And then you push back, and I think that's how you develop character. So I would push back by pushing the energy onto Austin, and I'd be like, oh, daily disses on Austin, because Austin was a goofy kid. I mean, me too. And so I'd bring up some like goofy stuff that he was doing, and then everyone would start making fun of Austin instead of me. And I wonder about that, because you wonder about the effects of that long term. Like, does that still affect people? Some of the stuff still affects me. I don't think the bullying affected me. I think that was more like character growth, but I think I took it well. If you don't take it well, then is it bad? Does it affect you poorly? Yeah, I wonder about that. How did these kids in this picture take their childhood, and do they have like lingering effects of that? I think most of my childhood was positive, and I really love all the lessons I learned from it. But some of these guys are still in my life. But yeah, I wonder about that. Sometimes my interpretation of it isn't everything. And then the last picture, that's me, looking at the camera. Dude who feels like he's just living an adventure. Like, so yeah, I didn't get good grades. This was the beginning of like, well, not 5th grade too. Kind of checked out when I turned in my assignments. And Miss Percy was really cool. So instead of failing me and set me up for failure in 7th grade, which I got bad grades in 7th, 8th grade, and all through high school anyways. But Miss Percy allowed me to get back into getting A's by letting me read books on my own and doing book reports. So yeah, she had a parent-teacher conference. I remember halfway through the year and said that, I'm doing terrible, not turning in assignments. But she noticed I was smart and I liked to learn. And she said if I had a book list where I would just read these books and write my own reports, and then whatever words I don't know, look them up, write the definitions. And I remember doing that, just not instead of doing homework, just reading books, looking up words, and writing reports on the books. And that was my 6th grade, the last half of 6th grade. Is instead of homework and stuff, I just like self-study. I'd just read a whole bunch and analyze the books and write reports. And I think some of them I would even draw pictures, illustrate the books. And so luckily I had a teacher who recognized that like I didn't really like doing the normal thing, but she still allowed me a way to have an education. Like she tied me into the system. She tricked me into not a trick, but she just that's I think what we need more of is some of the creatives don't like the institutional route, and we don't like being told what to do, and it's boring for us. And if you give us an alternative way to do it, then we could still I don't know, still thinking about that. But she tied me into, she was a good influence in my life. I appreciate that teacher. Those teachers that you remember, I remember her a lot. I remember she was a good